These
Not bad.
shenanigans.
So, yeah, 16, 17 minutes after the time, but not bad. All right. I think I will just begin and then cut everything out that we don't want to keep.
Good.
Be a short show.
All right. Well, no, that we don't want to keep. Not that they don't want to keep.
Oh.
It's October 4th, 2020, and welcome to episode 223 of the Retro Computing Roundtable. The RCR is a podcast about retro computer news, nostalgia, collecting, and huge remote gatherings. So, I am Paul Hagstrom in Boston, and I am joined today by 6 other retro computing enthusiasts. So, without further ado, clockwise from me on the screen that I am looking at is Quinn Dunkey from Los Angeles. How are you?
Hello, I'm excellent. The weather here is terrible, and it's 1 million degrees in here, and so I apologize to anyone watching on the live stream because I'm sweating a lot. But I'm impressed with the resolution of our circle this time around. It's approximating an actual circle.
It's pretty amazing, yes. I don't know what it is. It's not quite an octagon. Almost an octagon.
Heptagon.
Yep. And Earl Evans from Portland. How are you?
Hey there, everybody. Doing pretty well. A little while back, Portland was burning down. Some folks probably heard about that in the news, but the fires are getting more under control at this point, and the smoke has subsided from where I'm at. Portland had, I think, either some of the worst or maybe the worst for a short time air quality in the entire world. So it was pretty difficult here. You couldn't really go outside. Things were closed. It was crazy, but the smoke is kind of cleared and we're kind of back to normal, whatever that is for this year.
Excellent. Crossing the ocean now to Sweden, we have Jack Nutting in Stockholm. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing fine. No extreme weather here, just smooth, foggy sailing.
Nothing on fire.
Nothing on fire. Very little fire. It's not fire season.
Good.
You're in the country with that horse that keeps getting burned down every year, right?
Yeah, in the town called Yavna, they build a huge straw horse, and almost every year somebody sets it on fire. And at one time it was actually an American tourist who set it on fire because he had heard that it always happened, and he believed it was like, well, that's just it's the tradition that someone is supposed to just go and light it on fire, and so he was just lit on fire, and he stood around and waited, and he got caught. He didn't think he was doing anything wrong even.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Now down beyond the equator, we have Michael Mulhern in Sydney. How are you?
I'm feeling a lot better. You remember the days before COVID when we used to... Oh, that's right. It was all remote back then for the round table as well. So, yeah. No, Earl, I'm glad to see you're having some Sydney weather. We're just entering our bushfire season here. So I'm looking forward to days of where the air quality can be measured with a knife.
Yikes.
Scooped up and put into a bag. But, yeah. No, weather-wise, pretty good. We're well into spring, which is also known as the start of summer here. Fireys have been doing their hazard reduction, so the acreage just 2 blocks over and around that area it's all just had its hazard reduction burn, so we've just got over the smoke for that. So it's a long weekend here of relatively clean air. Just waiting for that to change.
Always the optimist.
Oh, always the optimist, yes. It could be worse.
All right, speeding back up to North America, generally east, we have Carrington Vanston in Toronto. How are you?
I am fine. Our country is, for the most part, not on fire, and I appreciate it.
Excellent. All right, and finally, completing the clockwise spiral is Blake Patterson in Northern Virginia. How are you?
Good. Glad to be here. No fires here. I mean, I'm pretty close to DC, so it's sort of a fire scenario always.
It's a different kind of fire.
Hashtag 2020.
Yeah, it's
the
dumpster fire. Yeah.
Dumpster fire.
But yes, going well. It's nice and breezy and cool. so as well as it can be, this close to the aforementioned. But yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, so this is the most crowded we've had this table for a long time. So I'm gonna attempt not to talk super fast, but yet still be concise. We'll see how that goes. We anticipate finishing sometime tomorrow. But so the host's topic that we have picked this time, it started out as a single word, which was regrets. I think we came up with that at the tail end as we were finishing recording last time, and we decided that seemed a little bit bleak, given the rest of the context of this year. So we wanted to tag onto that also something kind of like unregrets, the opposite, something that you bought or did or sold or investigated, or something that had an unexpectedly positive outcome as well. So you get to air your regret if you can also air some kind of positive thing as well. Those are the rules.
I like that angle.
Excellent. Then the feats of strength will follow.
That's right.
The airing of grievances.
So I don't know if anyone wanted to go first. I don't. But I think I have some ideas.
I'll go first.
Okay.
So I would say I think this is a good fit. It's kind of a regret, but it ended up being one of the, I guess, better decisions of my life, which was that I bought my Apple IIgs, which was the replacement for my Laser 128EX, which last time I contrived the host topic so I could talk about it, and this time I'm doing the same to talk about this computer. But I think what was interesting about it was, I think I talked about the laser as well, but it was kind of my first lesson in obsolescence of computing, because of course, in the early days, as we all know, there was a lot less of it. You could have the same computer for 10 years, and that was sort of okay. And the curve was just really starting to bend upwards on that, kind of in the late 80s, early 90s. And so I bought the 2GS pretty late in its lifetime, and I bought it secondhand from a friend from a bulletin board. And I bought it because, my understanding of it was a couple of years old, because I'd been hearing about it for a couple of years. And so I had this kind of dated image of, the power and the utility of it. And to me, it was this like mythical, crazy, powerful thing. And it was all I would ever need kind of thing. I remember when we used to think about a computer that way. And so I was so excited to buy it. And of course, it was immediately obsolete. My friends were already buying, 286s, even early 386s, and VGA and all the rest of it. So had that machine not existed, my life might have taken a different turn. I might have gone to PCs. But the positive angle on it, though, is that it was actually my favorite computer that I've ever owned. I still love that thing to this day, and because it has such personality and such character, and it's such an underdog, and it's all the things that I like in a thing. So it was, by and large, a net positive in my life. But it was also had that little tinge of disappointment in it also, because it was at the end of its life, and it was at the end of a life of a machine that never had a great life to begin with. So it never really went anywhere, and it certainly wasn't a rational choice by any means. It was a very emotional one, but it was one that I got a lot of joy out of. I really, really did enjoy that machine, and nothing but fond memories of it. So there you go. That's mine.
Excellent. Who next?
Well, I'll pop in there to keep the flavour going. My regret is that I had an opportunity to buy the original Macintosh when it arrived here in Australia. So back in '84, when there was all this hype about this newfangled machine that may or may not have been stolen from Fuji, Xerox, but we got the first three that came into Australia. So one stayed in the Melbourne office, one went to the Sydney office, and one came up to us in Brisbane. And they wanted basically after a while someone to take it on and do more about it. I'd been writing programs for Griffith University on their Apple II Euro Pluses up in the computer lab. So I decided instead to spend the $2,500 that I'd put aside and that's $2,500 in '84 money, which is quite a bit today. And I bought an Apple IIc instead because it was closer to what I was writing, making quite healthy tea money on the side of my day job. So I have a little regret that I didn't get an original, totally underpowered 128K Macintosh in all its original boxing. So that would have been good. And the ability to say that it was one of the first ones to arrive in Australia. But I think things might not have come out the same. I never really took to GUIs programming wise. I was more of working behind the scenes. So all my programming is really, I've rarely programmed anything in graphics, even to this day. All my programming is behind the scenes, scripting, analysis work, basically all the backroom programming that goes on. And I don't know if I would have quite got into programming if I'd fallen under the spell of the mistress of GUI. But that's my regret, that I would have had a good opportunity to get a Macintosh, sort of a seminal, sort of a machine of note with some good backstory. But yeah, was a regret story without a good regret.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Okay, who's next? Have we? There's no pattern here.
I could go. Mine
Wait,
is
next.
also connected, related to the Macintosh, the original Macintosh. I guess it wasn't right when the Mac came out. I had an Apple IIc at the time, so I think it was September 1985 or so. Anyway, I had wanted to upgrade. Well, whether it's an upgrade or not, I was enticed by the GUI, and so I was trying to sell the IIc and get the original 128K Mac. And so finally, after a great deal of time, I did. I'd read about other forthcoming computers, but anyway, so it worked out. We went to the store, brought the Mac home, and I was using it for about 4 or 5 days. And yeah, you did kind of feel the 128K restriction there. It needed a little more memory than that. But it was at that point that I walked into the dealer to buy a box of floppy disks, a different dealer that was closer to the house. And that's when I saw, for the first time ever, an Amiga on display. It was being demonstrated, the Amiga 1000. They had one unit. And I had heard of the Amiga, and I actually had gotten a little excited about it in the past, but I ended up staying with the Mac. But after seeing it and playing with it, long story short, that night, or the next night, my dad took me back to the store and we returned the Mac. And I put an order down for the Amiga 1000 and waited for 3 weeks and ended up with that. So I guess I got what I was looking for after a long while, but ended up sort of regretting it comparatively. And it was a fortunate thing as far as what area I ended up, having some of the best memories of over the years that would come, as the Amiga is one of my favorite platforms. The Amiga and the Apple II are my two main, happy places as far as retro computing. So that was a good start. And it was actually the first Amiga sold in the state of Virginia. It turns out it was the first dealer that sold it. They had the demo unit on sale, and I was the first order to be filled when it came in. So interesting. But yeah, that was a fun machine. And so there you go. That's my happy, sad, regret and not.
All right.
Cool.
Who's next?
Hey, where'd Carrington go?
He just dropped out. He wrote a note.
He couldn't handle the regret.
There's a fire alarm going off in his building, so he had to.
See, and he was just talking about fires.
Yes.
Oh, we don't have fires here.
Must have been an American.
Not me. I didn't.
It was
go
an American
live.
tourist. Or it was a tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The American set his building on fire. No, So anyway, I can go. So I guess a big regret that I have is that, well, when I sort of decided to jump ship from the Atari 8-bit stuff that I've been using for years to the Atari ST, and I sold everything that I sold literally everything I had. Well, except for some joysticks. I kept some joysticks and controllers, but otherwise, like, I don't even have a single floppy containing, dumb little programs that I made when I was 12 and 13 years old. Like, it's just all gone. I just ditched all of it, and I regret that. Not because I didn't do anything magical, but I think it would be fun now as an adult to like be able to load that up and say, oh, here's that thing I was trying to do, just like as a my own personal nostalgia thing. So I regret that pretty deeply. In a way, I guess I could also say that I regret having jumped from the Atari 8-bit to the Atari ST, because the Atari ST, just as a platform, like, I quickly got tired of it. And so that's my biggest non-regret, is that a couple years later I ditched the ST and got an Amiga 500 instead, which, like, on the surface are similar seeming machines, but the Amiga was just such a much more complete and powerful both hardware and software system. So
I feel you on the regret about childhood project loss.
Yeah.
I also don't have any of mine that I remember. I have a few from later, but my really early ones, the ones, the first ever program I made, which I remember very vividly, but all of those are lost because in my case, I wrote over those discs back in the day because a floppy disk was $20 or something. And, I was a kid. So there was a lot of that at the time where it's like, oh, I won't ever care about this dumb program. And who knew 45-year-old me would be like, oh man.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I've got my old floppy disks from back when I started programming, but the oldest one I've got, about half the sectors are marked as bad sectors so that I couldn't accidentally write anything to it, because, again, floppy disks were expensive and you weren't going to throw it away just because half of it didn't work. It started off as one or two bad sectors, so you'd get the old sector utility out, mark that as bad, and progressively go. The good thing is that I think it was more related to use, because in the intervening 30-something years, that's bad. In the intervening 40-something years, it's stabilized and no extra bad sectors are gone. But what could be hiding underneath those bad sectors? I'll have to get that onto one of those new Apple Source gizmos. Oh, that's right, I own one. It's just loaned it to somebody I haven't got it. So, yeah, spend all that money, let someone else play with it. But I don't think I'll ever recover what's underneath there, because I think that disc has just had so much stuff written over it time after time. But I'd love to have some of those first programs where I was starting stuff, and I'd love to have copies of some of those group programs that my mates and I were working on at university. Tabbed interfaces and drop-down menus and things like that back in the early Apple II days on the Europlus. So this is all being done 40 column screen. So plenty of regrets even on the programming side, let alone hardware collecting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that I had, like, when I came back to my floppies later and imaged them and started, playing around with them, there were some bad sectors, and I had this weird feeling like, oh yeah, I remember, like, that, of course, that file has the bad sector, like, like, you just keep using these things, like, just save a different copy.
I remember my last Apple II project disk, my big one, is all bad sectors on one side. One side of it went bad, and I had backed it up to the other side when it started to go bad. And I remember doing that. And but now, like, the fresh side has got a couple of bad sectors because it's 30 years old, and the other side is all bad, and none of it is really usable anymore. And it's this weird mix of, like, stuff that went bad back then and stuff that's gone bad since. And I don't know. Yeah, so it's like so now I've got all these programs on the disk, half of which don't run, and I don't know what they were supposed to be, or if they don't run because the code wasn't finished, or if they don't run because the sectors went bad. It's just a mess that I can't unwind now.
At least I never had to go through the trials of cassette tape, though my collecting is leading me. I've got some machines downstairs, and I'm going to have to go and use cassette tape for the first time. Though I think I'll end up cheating and just use WAV files from a player.
Yeah. I do kind of wonder if the applesauce is going to be able to do some kind of like forensic recovery. I mean, like it does some automatically. The program is actually pretty smart about trying to get as much as it can out of the bits. But I wonder if there is a way that a human can look at this and say, yeah, okay, I see what that was supposed to be.
Mm.
So
yeah.
Anyway,
an interesting project, which I think I might put on the back burner.
Yeah,
I think I've got much more achievable stuff I can be doing.
But the good thing is you can capture the flux now and worry about that later.
Yeah, there is that flux now. Worry later.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some way to. I won't. Okay. Let's see. I guess I haven't said mine
flux
yet.
on, flux off.
Yes, and I was. I will resist. Okay. So yeah, I guess I actually didn't. So my sort of regret. What I was gonna say was actually sort of mundane. I sort of regret getting rid of my SE30 because I liked my SE30. I've gotten many SE30s since, so it ultimately doesn't really matter. But I wish I had my hard drive, and that sort of thing. But I think the thing I was gonna say about the sort of unexpected. Or I said the anti-regret, I guess, is that I once had I basically like bid somewhat blindly on an auction that seemed like it was I don't know, it seemed like it could have been interesting, but the person had not really sort of described what it was, just sort of laid a bunch of stuff out and said, like, I've been carrying this around for too long. Somebody bid on it. And so I bid on this, and I was in touch with the person a little bit, and the person said, "Oh, I have like a couple more boxes of things. You want to do this too." And we worked this out over a bunch of time, but it turned out that what it was the guy's father had run basically like the only sort of authorized Apple repair place in Anchorage at a sort of relevant time, and the son had just sort of like kept all the stuff together and finally decided, this is dumb. I don't need this. And so what I wound up with was just all these repair parts and, internal documentation and old, and like a lot of demo things. Like it was interesting to see how the stores would be sent little demo copies of stuff to sell. And so I guess the anti-regret part was like, I didn't know that this was going to amount to anything. This was basically just like, someone selling, something that was basically just fuzzy pictures in an eBay auction. And, I saw a couple of things that seemed like they might be interesting, but it turned out to be quite something. So I do not regret having made that gamble. So maybe I'll stick with that. Okay. Everyone else's regrets were better anyway. So thank you, everybody.
Well, Earl, did you have anything yet?
What's that?
Oh,
no, I'll take it.
Earl.
Although
yeah,
I think I interpreted this a little bit differently than the rest of you did. I hope that's okay. My thinking on this was things I've done in the retro hobby, or maybe even industry if it's retro now. So I have a regret, an embarrassment, and an unregret. So I'll do them in that order.
Cool.
So the regret came to me recently when a few months back, my daughter had to move home kind of unexpectedly and quickly because of COVID. And she took what we call the gadget room that had all my retro stuff in it. Well, not quite all my retro stuff, which is part of the problem, but it had a bunch of retro stuff in it. And it was all piled up in boxes and, scattered about. And so I had to move it out quickly and just kind of put it where I could and box it up. And I realized that my retro computer collection was not only too big, but it was disorganized. It was just kind of a de-evolution into piles and boxes and that kind of thing. And what I regret is that I didn't take care of that sooner. Now I have a plan. I think the plan's going to work. We're going to see. I've partitioned off a part of my house in the downstairs in our daylight basement where this is where my retro stuff goes. And once that's full, that's it. And the rest of it I got to get rid of. So I'm going to store it in there kind of in priority order. And when I'm out of space, then I'm out of space. We'll see how that works. I'd also like to, kind of display it a little bit better too, to have fun with it. So that's my regret that I didn't do that sooner, but hopefully soon. We'll see. Fingers crossed. The embarrassment, it wasn't retro at the time, but it's retro now. I'd gone to a Comdex show and got an earful from IBM about OS2 and came back to my IT job and told the different people in my department, hey, OS2, that's the stuff. It's going to steamroll everything. OS2 is the greatest thing. It can make your lunch for you, and it can, also press your clothes simultaneously because it's multitasking. And we should upgrade all of our systems and get ready to run OS2. So my manager said, okay, let's do it. Started upgrading our systems, which was a good idea anyway. Turned out we needed to do that anyhow. So I don't regret that part. But I regret the incredible egg on my face over the next couple of years as OS2 did absolutely nothing. And we looked at it as like, hey, people will be, hey, how's that OS2 coming? I'm like, hey, go easy on me. So, yeah, live with that to this day. These days when I, in the retro world, when I see OS2, I kind of wince. It's like, don't remind me of that. The unregret that I did is I used to have a kind of, mediocre commute to work. And when I was going to and fro, one of the ways that I passed the time was listening to podcasts. And one day I was sitting around thinking, and they were reasonably new at the time. Is there a retro podcast? I wonder if there's a retro podcast. So I went out and I looked around. I didn't see any retro podcasts. And I thought, hey, I just start a retro podcast. What the heck? If there's a few people interested, then we'll go from there. So I did. And it was just so much fun. And through the years, I've met so many cool people, awesome friends, present company included, and got to take part in just unbelievable activities, meeting some of the original heroes of the past that made all this stuff happen, and being able to go places and see things that I didn't think I'd be able to see. So that's my unregret, is jumping into podcasting when I did. And, it was super fun. And it's been super fun. Been doing it ever since then, like zero regret in that regard.
I would never have figured that there was good podcasting software for OS2.
Nicely done.
Well played. Yeah, don't feel bad about getting sucked into OS2. I also fell for the hype on that one. I mean, the hype was massive on that thing. And a friend of mine with a PC at the time installed it, and we were all so excited about it. And then we played with it for about 5 minutes. It was like, oh, okay. I guess it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
don't worry, Earl. I played with OS2 for quite a while. I was in a IBM shop, mainframe-wise, and all of the good connectivity stuff for what we were doing. So I was using DBase OS2, PSF for OS2, almost OS2 for OS2. But yeah, I had quite a suite of machines and softwares and connectivity and things. But that was more along the lines that IBM only wrote them to run on OS2. But it was actually for me sad seeing it go, because I actually did quite like the whole interface, and Windows won, but was it better? Probably.
We had I installed OS2 when 3.0 came out. Warp, when they actually advertised it on television. I remember they had cool ads like use OS2, like during dinner time. Here comes an OS2 Warp ad, and so I installed it. It was it had all this. It was very exciting to read about, but like Quinn, I guess I ran it for like 3 days. And I said, okay, well, because it seemed to be launching like a new instance of Windows for every Windows app that you ran. And that didn't seem to work well with my limited memory. And anyway, but interesting little side story is one of my early jobs. I was doing support, technical support on site for a university, University of Virginia. And they had and I see Earl is on the stream video, is holding up his OS2 Warp Connect box. I don't still have the box, but I don't know where that went to. But at any rate, we would have to rotate who did on-call service for the overnight. And so I remember getting a call. It was my turn at 3 a.m. I had to go to the university hospital. There was a problem with one of their admission systems. And it turns out a neurosurgeon that worked at the university, at the hospital, was a big OS2 fan. And he had programmed a visual sort of an admission system that showed graphically each room and how many beds were in each room, and you would click on the bed and that's how they admitted people, but it was completely custom written, and something went wrong. And so I'm sitting in front of this at 3 a.m. trying to actually figure out what was wrong with it, which of course was impossible. Ended up rebooting and that helped. but yeah, see, the whole system was written by this guy, and running on OS2 version something. But yeah, it was interesting.
I remember in 1997, I had a short consulting gig at American Express, and the team that I was on, they were running OS2, the desktop for everybody. That's what they had to run. Someone had made a decision, and I remember coming there and I was like, "Wow, I didn't even know OS2 was still a thing." Like, I'd never used it. I'd also seen the ads on TV for OS2 Warp at the time before that, but like by 1997, I was like, it was totally off my radar. And then we got there, and it's like, this is what we're using. So it was just like, and we were not running Windows apps, so I didn't have to worry about that. I just remember running like basically a terminal and a web browser, and for that it seemed to work. But like, it was just a really sort of weird twist. Like, come work at this company. Oh, and we're running OS2 in the desktop. Wow.
Well, it stayed around for a while for some niche applications like ATMs. ATMs were running OS2 until not very long
I think
ago.
some of them still are. I believe from recent reports that some of them still do run it. Yeah. Interesting.
It's perhaps a good way to protect against hackers, is just run something so obscure no one knows how to do anything with it.
Well, it was pretty solid. They liked it because it didn't crash. It was good for an embedded situation like that.
Yeah, they got OS2 out there on the front of the bank, and then inside they've got COBOL running all their money management systems. It's like you didn't realize you're having a retro experience when you walk into any branch in your area. Yeah.
Do they still have pneumatic tubes?
Oh, I love those. I remember those. My mother, actually, the first time they appeared, she didn't realize that you put it back. She brought it home and was using it as a water-filled flour container. She thought that you were supposed to keep it, and she drove home with it, and it was incredible. I remember my father took a picture of it. My father took a picture of that thing with flowers in it, and this huge rugged tube. It was slid open with flowers.
Awesome.
I so wish you still had that.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
like this is your gift for coming to the bank today. For coming to the drive-thru, you get this tube to bring home with you.
I don't remember. I think it was before my time. I don't remember it physically, but I saw the picture, and if ever I find the picture, I'll bring it on the show.
I hope she went and put it back in the tube with the flowers still in it.
It did get returned to the bank eventually, but
The point about organization that Earl made, I think, it reminds me. I recently have been I have very limited access to all of my retro stuff, and so I was recently in there. Actually, the last couple of times I was there, I got something. So I will say later, I picked up a Newton and a couple of Newtons and an eMate that I wanted to bring back because I wanted to play with them here. But I realized, okay, I need a power for this, and okay, where is the power for this? And that's I definitely have regrets about trusting my memory. It's like, oh, I will always remember what these screws go to. I will just put them here on the table. And then 6 years later, there's a little pile of screws. I'm like, I do remember saying I will always remember what those screws go to, but I don't remember what they went to.
I learned a long time ago, baggies and a Sharpie.
Yeah.
They're your friend.
And I guess Carrington regrets saying there are no fires.
That was an instant
I'm feeling
karma.
kind of bad now. I'm like,
Yeah.
did a little dig at him, but come back.
He's
Carrington.
going to come back and say the big straw horse out the front's gone.
Well, so
That's-
perhaps Carrington will come back. We'll see.
We'll see.
Meanwhile, I could mention that Bill G in the chat said, "I wish I had my old Atari programs. They were on tape." And Andy in the chat said, "I regret giving away my computer's links. I had an ST by then, so I gave it to a friend who didn't have a computer. They are now as rare as hen's teeth, and I would love another chance to use one."
I'm sorry, what is a computer's links for the non-Atari people?
So just an Atari Lynx?
I don't know what a cam. I don't know if computers is a typo. Computers links. I do not know.
Well,
Oh, no, I see it now. It's looking it up. I see it's a 48K. Looks like a Spectrum clone, Z80.
oh, so it isn't an Atari at
No,
all.
no, it's not. It's not a clone. It's a Z80 akin to the Spectrum, but it was a competitor.
Interesting.
It looks like a Russian Spectrum clone, but
Interesting. Okay, so it was misleading. So it was seeing ST in that same sentence.
yes,
Yeah, everyone went to the links. Yeah.
bamboozled by context.
That's right. Is there a shirt in that? Perhaps.
I'd wear it.
Okay.
So now we learned about another Z80 Spectrum-looking thing that we didn't know about.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of Spectrum clones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many of them sort of in Eastern Europe, or
Mhm.
that side of the
And-
block.
I think Brazil, South America as well.
Yeah.
Quite a few.
A better term might just be like Spectrum likes or ZX likes, because it was just basically the minimal computer you could build around a Z80, right? Like that was basically what it was. And so there was a lot of computers kind of in that wheelhouse
Right.
that weren't necessarily compatible with the ZX Spectrum or whatever, but were definitely
They're all-
like a Z80 with some RAM and an ASIC hanging off of it.
Yep. Oh, and they were all 4 megahertz. Always 4 megahertz, Z80.
It was a very cheap and easy chip to build a computer around because it has that static core, so it's very simple. You build it with 3 chips.
Yeah, I remember being kind of surprised when I came to understand kind of what like the Apple One and even Apple II was. It's really just like, this is just a way to talk to this chip. Really, I mean, the Apple II maybe more so, but I mean, I just thought there was more to it. But really, it's just like, this is how we're just talking to the chip.
Well, and it's really like all the early computers were actually just a video system, and everything else was accessory to the video system because that was the hard part of what they were solving.
Okay. Well, I guess if Carrington comes back on, we can ask him about his regret.
Well, that'd be a regret, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
we had a couple of sorry, I didn't give people an opportunity to drag this topic on. Is my bias showing? Okay.
I think I would regret doing so.
Okay.
Yeah. We can move on.
All right.
regret that I only have one computer to give for my collection.
Right. So the next section that we usually do is feedback, and we have a couple of pretty cool ones, but I think I'm gonna save those just because we have such a crowded group right now. So we'll come back to those. Although, well, I also sort of pulled myself out of the items of interest in news on the strength of reading feedback, but that's okay. It'll be all right.
Right.
Uh,
You have your auctions to go through, Paul.
There's always the auctions. There's always the auctions. So thank you for writing the feedback, everybody. And you will hear our response to it next time, probably. But so maybe we can go into the items of interest in news next. And I guess the first one here is Earl's.
Okay, so the Atari 8-bit bot, it's on Twitter. It was, I think, created by Kay Savitz and Bill Kendrick. And it's pretty fun because you can tweet it a program in a variety of languages. They include Atari Basic, just your standard Basic reference from the cartridge, or Turbo Basic XL, which is like a superset of that, or Logo, or Pilot, or even assembly language. And then it will tweet you back a video up to, I think, a maximum of 30 seconds, although they say if you're going to take a whole 30 seconds, you better make it good. But that's not the default. I don't remember what the default is exactly, but it will tweet you back a video of your program running, which I just think is so cool. So it must gobble it up, stick it in an emulator, do a video capture of it running with the parameters that it uses, and then tweets it back to you. So this is kind of a variation, I think, on these like 10-liner basic programs or other things where you're trying to keep your program crisp because it has to fit in a tweet. And if you follow this bot, you'll see that a lot of people have made some pretty creative programs that fit in a tweet. I don't think it supports sound yet, but I think the word yet is in there. So I think maybe at some point it will. And I thought it was a lot of fun, and we'll have a link for it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's sort of a modern day take on the old 1 and 2 line programming challenges. So 280 characters, that's going to be, well, basically for Applesoft, that was equivalent to almost a line. But yeah, it should be fun to sort of see what it can do. But yeah, you disillusioned me. I had visions of Kay sitting there with his touch typing skills, typing it in, and then using his phone to record the video, and then posting it back. I mean,
we don't know that that's not what's happening.
Yeah, I have no evidence one way or the other.
Oh, okay. You were hypothesizing. Okay,
exactly.
and
all supposition.
Yeah, and I'm a realist. Okay, good. Then.
we should say there is also an Apple II one now that I think is new, and I've been following that one on Twitter. And there's been some great programs submitted to that, especially last couple of days. What I love about these is that they're sort of a return to the batch processing model of computing, because you're writing your code, sending it off to like a mysterious entity, and then you wait a while and you get your results back and hope that you did it right.
Now, if we can only do it on punch cards.
I was about to say, Earl, how about we get together and write one so people send in images of their Holworth cards, and we run it for them, and then we send them back a video of their printout.
Yeah.
Good.
That's almost crazy enough to actually do.
In snail mail.
I love the levels of technology that would be required to recreate that experience from 1968. Yeah.
I'll organize for the edit where we actually write out their cards, and then as we're walking over to the emulator, one of us trips and spills the cards.
Right.
I waited
hazards or whatever.
Yeah,
like
I was waiting until Quinn was drinking to do that. So
yeah.
So I do have a related question. We had a well-known superstition on the Retro Computing Roundtable that each episode we had to say the name Kevin Savitz at least once.
Well, that's not going to work anymore.
Now that he's going by Kay Savitz, is the spell broken? Is it kind of like the Beetlejuice thing? Or do we have to say Kay Savitz now? Or what's the new rule? Somebody tell me the new rule.
He's ruined it. He's ruined it for everybody. Well, he is a party pooper. He has spoiled it for the entire world.
I think maybe last time we didn't say his name at all. I think we may have gone the whole time without saying his name.
Yeah. He who can't say his own name.
But right. it'll be the Savitz part that counts. It's okay,
Golly gosh, I'll have to go out into the bush and find some animal to sacrifice to the gods.
Yeah, I feel like there was something I was going to say, but I've lost track of it now. So it's all right. But I really do like that the Apple II bot too. And there was one. I don't think I tried the Atari one, but oh yes, I know what I was going to ask. So
Earl, I've got it. We can create the Colbot.
Nice.
Cobalt.
Yeah, Cobolbot.
Oh, Cobalbot.
Because you could fit maybe the first word of a COBOL program into
Oh,
a
you
tweet.
could. Yeah.
At least one word. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Please include last 10 tweets as my data definition.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. When in the 2-line programming competitions for the Apple II, at least, there was a trick you could do. But basically, like, you have an input buffer limitation. I think it was something like 251, 253
Yeah,
characters or something.
Yeah, it was a bit less than that, but yes. Yeah, no spaces, and yeah.
But so the thing I'm wondering about is so I don't know if this is general to all Microsoft or whether it's just AppleSoft, but there was an abbreviation for print, which was just a
question mark. Yeah.
I'm wondering if that would work on the Apple II bot.
Well, it works on the Apple II one. I can't remember what other ones it works for, but yeah, a lot of the languages that was an abbreviation. But they never had L question mark instead of L print. But yeah.
That created a really weird circumstance where when you listed your program, it would show a listing that you can't type because it would expand the question mark into print when you listed it. And then later on the Apple IIe, it had that editing mode where you could go up with the cursor and retype the line. And you would get to a point where you couldn't reach the end of your own line because it had been expanded to print. And so you get to character 243, which was the limit, and it would start beeping at you, and then you were stuck.
I used to do my 1-line and 2-line programming challenges in a text editor on the Apple II. Then I'd exec the text file back in to actually run it. Because for that problem, because if you forget to hyper over the print and turn into a question mark, and you hypered a few of the spaces, then you hit the buffer, and you've still got program to go in there. So I used to just fire up a text editor and just exec the program into the Apple.
And so that's my crucial question about the Apple II bot is it treating this as an input buffer or is it not? Like
it'll be interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to try that.
I think it must be. I think it must be typing. Well, it's probably using the copy paste feature of Virtual 2 or something like that. Yeah. So it's treating it as input. It's going in directly into the keyboard buffer inside the
So as long as the tweet is shorter than 240, well, obviously it's going to be shorter than 243. It's only going to be 240, isn't it? Or 180, 280. Numbers, 280. Hate them.
280, I think.
Numbers, horrible things.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Anyway, neat idea. It is kind of funny that like we managed to get away from like submitting jobs. So, by having our home computers, and now someone's sticking a home computer at the other end of a job submission program.
And there's $10 million of cloud computing infrastructure between them.
That's right.
Great. Yeah.
As long as they don't do one for JCL.
Yeah. Okay. Jack, you have the next thing.
Yeah, so staying on Atari news, we've talked a few times about FujiNet, which is a project that's been worked on in the Atari community for a while now. And it's actually considered to be a done deal, a released device people can buy today from vintagecomputercenter.com. And what this is, it's a pretty massive all-in-one, well, massive function-wise. It's not a big device, but it provides a lot of stuff that you would otherwise have multiple external devices for an Atari. So disk images and cassette images can be loaded off of an SD card, micro SD card. It does serial emulation for the 850 adapter, so you can do all of your sort of modem-y type stuff. It does printer emulations. It actually emulates a half dozen different Atari printers plus Epson, Okimate, a variety of things. So you can print as if you were printing to an actual printer, and it ends up saved as a PDF file on your SD card. It has some other stuff that's been in a few other devices, like it has this SAO2BT, this Bluetooth connectivity. It has a real-time clock. But what is really sort of the big new thing about this that was the starting point of the whole project is the network device. So with a network device, you can both you can do things like there's actually a a driver for a new device that's called N. Lets you actually program to the N device and make software in assembly or basic or whatever you want that can send data back and forth to another computer elsewhere. And the other really big thing is you can mount devices from the network. So you don't even have to have things on your SD card. You can actually mount things from a server, both read and write to disk images. So it seems pretty sweet, and it's not costing a lot of money, between $55 and $70 complete. Or you can also just buy a case. You can just buy the PCB. There's like various options. Or you can actually build this yourself if you want to. But it's nice that there's a ready-made thing. So this is pretty cool. I haven't ordered one yet, but I certainly will. And one thing that I thought was pretty neat that Tom Cherryholmes is one of the guys who's been working on this. He demoed a thing, who made a little YouTube demo. So one of the things that this device has is it has a built-in SAM hardware emulation thing. So this software automated mouth that can speak. So it has a thing that runs that exact same voice generation software on this device. And because the Atari's SIO port has an audio input that pipes straight out to your TV or whatever you're listening through, so this thing can talk, and it doesn't matter if your computer is generating noise. Otherwise, it'll sort of meld it all together. And so one of the fun features of this is you can set up a bunch of disk images to swap into a drive, and you press a button on the device to swap. And when you swap, it speaks. SAM speaks and tells you the number of the device or of the image that you swapped in. So if you have a multi-disc Infocom game, and you have those assigned to disk 1, 2, and 3, and your save is disk 4, each time you press the button, it'll say 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a neat little feature, considering that, and it's a nice hack, or it's a nice adaptation for the fact that this thing can't affect the output of the video at all, but it can affect the output of the audio because the audio in on the SAO just goes out with the signal. So pretty neat.
That was a lot of weird layers of hardware, software, emulation, and not emulation. And
Yes.
I got lost in there exactly what this device is doing, but it sounds cool.
It does a lot of stuff. So
This FujiNet is
it combines like Wi-Fi modem, SD card, and print and emulating printers and more. And especially the ability to like mount disks across the network, across the internet. You can connect to a server anywhere and mount disk images from it.
You said if you print to it, it saves it as a PDF. Where does the PDF go?
On the SD card.
Oh, crazy.
So you have to pull it out somewhere.
This thing is very, very cool.
It's
Yeah,
messing me up. I mean, I was talking earlier about the choices that I was having to make in terms of my collection. And one of the things that had been the hardest was deciding eventually to get rid of my Atari 400 and 800. And then the whole FujiNet thing came up. And this thing is so cool that it may actually convince me that I have to keep those computers just to be able to use this.
What was the price of this again, Jack?
Between $55 and $70.
Interesting.
Really inexpensive.
Yeah, that's cheap for this type of thing.
I remember looking at this because I actually bought. I have a PAL Atari 800 XL and a NTSC 130XE, and I was looking to find a SD floppy emulator for whatever reason. Like I saw this, but it seemed like it was so much was happening, like there was so much going on that I think I made an assumption that it was too expensive without even looking, and I bought a SIO to SD. You're probably familiar with that device, which is it's a floppy emulator, file emulator, but it doesn't do any of these other things. But really, I think I paid more for that than this.
Yeah.
Costs. So that there's a regret I'll add to my earlier.
Yeah, I also have an SIO to SD that I bought a couple of years ago, and it costs more than this. I have an S Drive Max I bought last year, and it cost maybe more, but similar. The one good feature of the S Drive Max this does not have is the S Drive Max has a screen, so you can actually navigate on the screen to like pluck a disk image and mount it.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, you have to kind of set them up in advance, and you can swap between. But
Right. I mean, I've been having great fun with the Atari. I was never a Atari 8-bit guy, and the SAO to SD has allowed me to have quite a bit of fun with it, and also demos, which is why I have the PAL version. But anyway, this is pretty awesome. I will have to take a look at this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I might well. I mean, this is almost nothing kind of money in a way.
right.
So I don't know. Yeah, I guess the advantage of having several, because I also have at least one SIO to SD, and I think I might have. I don't know if I have anything else, but if you have two, then you can run. Have one on each computer or whatever.
Right.
So, okay, Michael, you have news about the new home of the Australian computers.
Yeah, the Australian Computer Museum Society has recently had its board meeting, and basically it's out with the old, in with the new. So ACMS has historically had a bit of a lost path at times. The originators of it basically have grown old and weary, and one of them is no longer with us. John just recently passed away. He was one of the on the CSIRO team that developed Wi-Fi. So that's a little bit of a Australian flavour to one of the most pervasive networking connectivity that we've got. But we've also just recently announced that we have a large exhibition office space and warehousing space at Croydon here in Sydney. So this long weekend, we've had people out there starting the cleanup and getting racking and other things in place, shelving, and then we'll start moving in items of the collection, which a lot of us had to rescue from the defunct storage facility that we had at Lidcombe, which was basically going to have a bulldozer sent through it, and so they could build a new apartment block where it was. But with a lot of hard work by the new board, so the old fresh blood and everything, that's all underway. So my wife will be happy that I'll be finally moving on the stuff that I've temporarily stored for the last 18 plus months here in various places around the house and the garage and the garden shed and downstairs. She barred me from putting any of it in the house, but I've got stuff here that even under the desk where I am at the moment, I can't even stretch out my legs because I've got piles of discs and cables and bits and pieces. So I'll personally be glad to return that which is theirs. So I can actually then fill the space with more of my own stuff. But one of the things that they're wanting to do is to set it up for, this was the plan before 2020 went and dumped on us all, school excursions and things along those lines. So I think we're now writing off 2020 as a year of planning, year of building, and when the real world decides to let us back in, we'll see where we go from there. So I have ideas of what we need to do as far as education and curriculum wise. So I'll have to investigate with the Department of Education here in New South Wales about how we can tie in our love for computer history and hardware and things, and tie that closer to the curriculum so that we can make it a worthwhile excursion for school kids. So that'll be quite a different exercise. So
interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, good luck.
Yeah.
Okay, and I guess I'll say one quick thing that I lifted from the feedback, which is something that Ian pointed out actually from Twitter, but it is a here. Let me quickly share this. it is a programming games for the ColecoVision and Atom book. And so the sort of description says, you love the ColecoVision and would like to learn how to develop your own games for the machine? This book is for you. It's I think it's a pre-order right now for €30, and it will ship to the US, Canada, Europe, and Australia with tracking of $10 maximum for the shipping. That is. So shipments are very well protected. So you have to compute this in euros and US dollars somehow to figure out your ultimate price. But I thought this is the book is by Tony Cruz. So is this from anyone familiar with this?
No, but I think I might have to go and add a ColecoVision and Atom to my collection just so I can get the book. I like books.
ColecoVision was an awesome console, so this is actually pretty tempting, this book.
Yeah, and I thought it was kind of surprising. Like, I guess I don't know very much about the Atom, but I think of both of these as sort of. I mean, I guess the Atom I do think of as a kind of an actual computer, but the ColecoVision it didn't even occur to me to think about writing something for the ColecoVision. So it's interesting that there are, that there's enough interest in at least the author's mind to write the book, but it is tempting. It's not super, it's not super expensive, and it's kind of it would be interesting to see. I don't even know what the brain of one of these things is. Does anyone know what the chip running it is?
It's a Z80. It's a Z80 it has the same graphics chip as the TI, the TI-99. It's that TMS. Quinn probably knows the part number. I don't know.
Yeah, 9918.
I know you can swap in that FPGA F19A.
Yeah, that F15A.
But yeah, so it's like the brain or the heart, whatever you want to call it, of a Spectrum clone. Well, of course, I guess it's closer to MSX because MSX has the TI graphics chip.
Yeah.
Z80. So it's really like an MSX machine. But like Quinn said, it was the one, like if you were the kid on the block that had the ColecoVision instead of the the VCS or even the Intellivision, it always seemed to me like there was always that one kid, like we all had big wheels, and there was always that one kid that had the green machine. Do you remember the green machine?
Yeah.
It was always, Mr. Cool Kid's got the green machine. He also had a ColecoVision.
Right. That kid had everything.
Yeah.
If you're interested in writing retro console software, I think the ColecoVision is a more interesting target to me than, say, the Atari 2600, which a lot of people do. Because the 2600, you just spend all of your effort beating your head against trying to keep the scan line, going. Whereas the ColecoVision has a really nice sprite chip in it, and you can focus much more on the gameplay and not have to. The programming model of it is very much like the original NES. There's tile maps that you can layer, and then there's sprites, and the sprite maps point to palettes, and it's all very logically laid out. It's a really nice graphics chip in that thing.
And to add a very obscure point onto the tail end of this thing, that graphics chip, which is used, as we've just mentioned, in several different systems, there was at least one, I think, two different graphics cards for the Apple II that came with programming libraries, and they spoke very heavily in the advertisements about the sprite capabilities. So you could put one of these graphics chips on a board in your Apple II, and then from BASIC, get sprites moving, which is just a very, very bizarre thing. I'd like to see one of those in action, but
yeah. So Peter Neubauer did a great talk at Kansas Fest about putting an F18A in an Apple II and using the libraries for those old sprite cards, because it is the same chip, so you can actually do it. And it was amazing. It was a greatly underappreciated talk.
That was a good one. I enjoyed that talk.
Mm-hmm. That was the year you were there. Or a year you were there?
One of the years I was there, yeah.
This was not this year? It's not this year?
No, it definitely wasn't this year. No, I couldn't make Kansas Fest this year. The planes weren't flying.
I think Peter's talk was a little bit underappreciated because it crossed a bunch of technologies that all of which were extremely obscure. I mean, the sprite cards were very obscure at the time. A lot of people don't know about the 9918, and then the F18A in modern days is a very obscure retro kind of object to begin with, and then putting one of those in an Apple II is an even more obscure thing to do. So it was I was the target audience for that talk, and I thought it was amazing to me.
Yeah, I went for the FPGA and just left with my eyes agog. It was
Yeah, I bought one of those. I bought one of those F18As to put in Veronica, my homebrew retro computer, because if you want to put graphics in a homebrew computer, it's the perfect device. Like you just put 5 volts on it, and there's a couple of data lines, and you get these amazing like ColecoVision level of graphics for very, very little effort. So it's an awesome device. He's not currently making them. He's been working on a version 2, which has HDMI and some other nice features. But it's who knows when it'll become available.
Yeah, I added a F18. I replaced the graphics chip in my TI-99 with an F18A to get 80 columns, to BBS, to use the system for BBSing, and it's shockingly nice to BBS on that machine. It has very fast serial hardware on the interface board, but yeah, it's the F18A is impressive, very impressive.
Yeah, it's an awesome device because it's a drop-in replacement for the 9918, and any machine that used that, including the TI and including the Coleco and other things, and some arcade boards used it as well. But it's also adds a bunch of stuff. So yeah, it adds 80 columns, and it adds some pure bitmap modes, and spiffs up the color density in a couple of modes.
More colors. Yeah,
more colors, and it's all completely back compatible. So yeah, really, really cool device.
Yeah, I know after Peter's talk, I was hoping, for a future where a lot of these became available and a lot of people got them, so that this would be a way that you could write new Apple II games. That future might still be coming. I don't know, but it's not here yet. But I had the same thought about the VidHD too. That's a relatively cheap card that quite possibly everybody will soon have, and sort of a similar kind of thing. It would now even your Apple II Plus has super high res graphics,
which is amazing. I love that that's possible.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Does anyone else have any items of interest and news they would like to put in? No. Okay. All right. I guess that's the end of the items of interest and news. And now, a word from our sponsor. And while I'm here, was the mini pet a gift idea already once?
I looked at the gift guide and I didn't see it, and I searched the RCR podcast site and didn't find it. So
okay,
I think it may have been discussed on the show, but I don't think it was a gift idea. But
unless it was last time,
check me on that. Yeah, unless it was last time.
Maybe I was thinking of the Altair Arduino, because we did talk about that a couple times in a row too. We did talk about the mini pet just in terms of I think there was a wire crossing issue or something that got fixed.
Right, with the user port.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay. Well, it's, whatever. They can get 2 mini pets as a gift.
Yeah, stereo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was on the gift guide.
Yeah,
okay. Cool. And we're back. And so for this time, the host's retro computing gift idea is, in fact, Earl's idea. So maybe I'll let Earl discuss it.
Okay.
What is it, Earl?
It's called the Mini Pet, and it is a build-it-yourself kit computer, which is effectively a Commodore PET work-alike. A couple of the chips aren't identical to what you had in the PET, because the chips on this are ones that you can source today. So, it's not a circuit exact replica of the PET, but it's pretty close. And it comes in kit form. You can build it, and then you can use it. And there's a couple different form factors that it's available. One is that you can get it as a circuit board, build it up, and then put it in an actual Commodore PET. Say you have a PET and the monitor and the power supply and that work, but the circuit card is messed up beyond repair. You can actually make this the main board in a actual PET, which is really cool because one of the neatest things about a PET is the form factor of the machine. And this lets you bring an otherwise unfixable PET back to life. But the other form that you can get this in is with a keyboard. Now, it used to be that the keyboards that came with it were limited to your standard PC board push buttons. And that wasn't actually that usable. What they decided to do was instead, not instead, as an option, to offer a chiclet-like keyboard that looks remarkably like the original 2001-8 Commodore PET. And if you're on the stream or watching this on YouTube later, you can actually see Paul hovering over this keyboard. But as you can see, that's the Commodore PET that everyone knew and hated. But
Right.
still better than those printed circuit board push buttons that were offered in the other keyboard choice. So this is just really neat for a couple of reasons. One is it can run PET software. It acts like a Commodore PET. But the other thing is it's a build-it-yourself computer that you can actually have the satisfaction of soldering together and then using and saying, hey, I built my own computer. This is neat.
Excellent. Yeah. And it's 200 pounds. So it's
For one of the
It's-
options. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I see. That looks like the base. But yep. Yeah, so it's not super cheap, but really pretty interesting. Like it would be it is tempting. It is tempting.
The keyboard is nice. I wonder what the details are on that, like how it's constructed.
This one with the
Yeah,
chiclet keyboard, yeah, that is
Yeah.
interesting.
that's quite cool looking.
Now, people have kind of gone crazy. One of the videos that I saw on the 8-Bit Guys channel is where someone had made a printed circuit board that would let you use Cherry MX switches to build a keyboard for this. And so with that, you get an actual beautiful keyboard with, wonderful tactile response and all that you can then hook up to this mini PET and have not only your own computer that you built, but a really nice keyboard experience. Now, that's a lot more into the do-it-yourself sort of realm. You'd have to source the keys and put that all together and then wire it up properly to the mini PET. But an exercise like that actually happens on the 8-Bit Guys channel, where he does that with a Cherry MX keyboard. So this has a lot of potential, I think.
So with the PETs, so the original PET had a keyboard that looked sort of like this chiclet one with the built-in cassette and everything too.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I pointed the wrong way. I don't know. The cassette's on, doesn't matter. But how much in the later revisions of the PET, where they actually had a little bit more typewriter-like keyboard, is the brain basically the same? I'm wondering if you actually put a sort of regular keyboard on this, if that is now like a complete anachronistic experience because you have too good a keyboard for the brain.
Well, I don't think this is specifically a 2001-8 PET recreation. This is a more generic PET recreation, kind of a pan model sort of circuit. So, but I'd have to look that up. I don't know if that's actually on the page there, if you scroll down, which particular PET model that this is a recreation of.
That's a good question.
The first line says it's compatible with the 2001 N32.
Yeah. Okay.
So the
Okay.
3032 and 4032 models. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And those are good ones, right? I mean, like I'm trying to remember.
They are.
The 40 is a lot of columns, isn't it?
Well, so what this doesn't have is like the 8032 with an 80 column video output. This is a recreation of the PET circuit that the 40 column systems.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember if they were 20 and 40 or 40 and 80, but
They were
Yeah,
40
they
and
actually
80.
okay.
The VIC
I
20
have-
was the only
exactly.
one, I think, that ever had less than 40 columns in the Commodore line.
Yeah, those were. I remember them from the store displays, the VIC-20s in their comically large letters. But, excellent. Okay, so that is what you can save up and buy for yourself or for those to whom you give gifts. And to sort of make that saving up last longer, here are some eBay auctions we can talk about. Blake, you have the first set.
Yes, I do. So it's a series, actually, of items that are all related. And it turns out that on eBay, someone is holding an estate sale. Unfortunately, a person, C.B. Wilson, has recently passed away. And looking into his history, he was an engineer at Texas Instruments for 33 years, from 1967 to 2000, and he worked originally on radar and various military systems, and then shifted into calculators and other computing type devices from TI. And at any rate, in his estate are a number of very rare items that, and I see that it's being shared for those watching on YouTube. There are several items, I think 5 or 6, and let me share my screen if I can. Jack or Paul. Okay, so first, let me give a little rundown of most of these items relate to the TI CC40. And just to give a rundown for those that aren't familiar with that, the CC40 is a portable system. It's somewhat limited in that it has one line of text. It had built in, I believe there was a word processing memo pad, that type of thing built in. It accepted cartridges. Anyway, it was a portable device that TI ran. It was only on the market for about a year. It came out in '82, and it didn't have any way to. There was no cassette connection. There was no direct storage ability for the device, which limited it. But TI had created a proprietary USB-like protocol bus called the hex bus, and they were creating a number of devices that were going to come out, and I think they would have if the device had been more popular, and of course if the TI-99 itself didn't also have a sunset at the same time. There was an interface for the TI-99 that was developed that would allow it to use these same hex bus devices. And it was an intelligent bus, and basically, for those watching on the live stream, there's some pictures of little small printers, full-size printers, modems, serial interfaces. TI licensed the Exatron wafer tape drive, and that was going to be the main storage item. There was a floppy 5¼ inch floppy drive developed. Anyway, all of this stuff was in prototype, but none of it, few items made it to market. And so what this auction is for, it's a number of items that are from this gentleman's estate that were not for public distribution. Some of these were development hardware, some were prototypes. So the first one, and these I imagine will go for rather dear sums because of the rarity. So just walking through them, the first item is VTG Texas Instruments 64K cartridge development simulator, and it interfaces through HexBus, or actually I see it has a cartridge edge connector. So basically it's a circuit board in a box that you interface into the cartridge port on the CC40. It had a cartridge input, and one way or another, and I'm not sure of the details, whether you could attach via serial to a host computer and send data through this to the CC40, or if you had to write EPROMs. But this was a way to obviously, create software applications on cartridge for the CC40, and there's not a lot of details and information in any of these descriptions. And I think digging around online, certain details can be found. So that one currently at $650. It's 5 days left on the auction. $6.50. I'm sure it'll go dramatically higher than that. The next item is, and this is the one that's not specifically for the CC40. There's a 1967 acoustic data coupler rare modem, which has a $299 buy it now, and it is a acoustic coupler in a box, that sort of thing, but not related to the CC40 directly. The next item for the CC40 is and this is actually something that I'm sort of interested in. I have a CC40 and I'm going to watch it, but I think again this will probably go very high. It's a rare Texas Instruments video interface HX1100 prototype. And what this does in looking at it is it provides a 40-column display for this one line, this unit that normally has I think it has 33 characters across, or 32 characters across the screen. It's certainly not a spacious display, but this gives you 40 by 25 or thereabouts. And that would be very interesting to see. I don't know if any of the software would actually support it or how that would work, but I would certainly like to play with that. So that one surely will escalate. 3 days left on that. The next one is a manual. It's a HexBus 3.5-inch microdisc manual document. And this is some development documentation to do with just printed out in a binder, but it's dealing with some information to do with floppy drive. Apparently, that was in development. Just a rare artifact from the early days of TI. $19.99. 5 days left currently. Then this is a very highly sought after device. It's a functional prototype wafer tape drive, which again is an adaptation of the Exatron stringy floppy. So this would work, and it looks like it comes with a box of 8 or 10 tapes that seem to still be wrapped. Again, HexBus interface, so it would work with the CC40 or the prototype interface, HexBus interface for the TI-99. I've seen these set up in videos working the few rare examples that are out there. But yeah, these were never beyond prototype. Let's see. And the last item is, I suppose this is the king of the lot. It's a TI Compact Computer 40 Plus prototype. And the CC40 Plus was going to follow the CC40. It's basically the same machine. There's no expansion on the display, but it does actually have a DB9 cassette deck interface like the TI-99, so it makes it dramatically more practical if someone wanted to actually do some work and save it beyond the small internal store of memory on the device. And yeah, so this is a very rare thing. I'd actually never seen one of these before. But so all of these things would be rather sought after by TI collectors. I actually have a modem that was sold on the market, a CC40 HexBus modem, which I've actually tested out. I did a dial-up and did a connection on the 32 character single line display, which was not highly enjoyable, but it was interesting to see it work. There's a few devices, a few cartridges, did make it out to the market, but again, it wasn't very successful. Anyway, so that's a rather interesting set of items, and I think if you're a TI person, you might want to take a look through there. I'm going to keep an eye on the video device box, but I feel it's going to quickly jump well beyond my means, and
yeah.
So
Yeah, the manual caught my interest, but seeing they're using the global shipping program to send
yes.
things overseas, that's a current bid $19.99, shipping $106.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, actually, and I wanted to mention the HexBus interface was ahead of its time. It was similar in a lot of ways to USB. It was not hot swappable. You couldn't plug in something and unplug it safely and have things just continue on. But that was sort of the main, one of the central technologies at the core of the unit. And as I said, TI had a sidecar box. You could add another link to that locomotive that stretches off to the right of the TI-99, so you can start using these peripherals if you had one of those. But the HexBus interface lived on. Like after the CC40 failed, the TI-74 programmable calculator, and I believe the other one was the TI-95, had the HexBus interface. I believe they renamed it. They were calling it something else, but it was physically different but electrically identical to the HexBus. So it actually lived on and was hardly mentioned in the product descriptions, of the device, whereas it was the main flag waving point of the CC40. So, but interesting and rare to see these together on eBay, certainly.
I hope wherever those wind up, that the person who ends up with them can maybe take some pictures and document them, or in some other way kind of preserve some of that information for posterity. I'm going to cross my fingers on that. I have a CC40 also. Quite a while back, a listener had sent me one new in the box, just for, yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Because there was a store on the internet for a while that had them brand new in the box. And
I got a new in the box one, and I think it must have been from the same source. Just as you Earl led me down the road to that source for the PX8, which I also got new in box. Earl has his eye on new in box portable machines of old, it seems. But they and there were a few devices available, but some of these just you just don't see out there.
Well, I remember taking it out and playing with it and really enjoying playing around with it and reading through the manual. And am I recalling this correctly, Blake? It seems like the basic language was actually pretty sophisticated for that little guy for a one-line display.
Yes, it had a version of BASIC that, as I recall, was very similar to TI's extended BASIC. They had a second BASIC that came in a cartridge, and I don't think it was identical, but it was notable for being surprisingly full-featured for such a for such a machine. And maybe that could have played into the eventuality of this display adapter, where you're going to be able to really take advantage of it when you got home and plugged it into your monitor. But yeah, it's and the documentation that came with it, if I recall, whether it was separate or it was bundled, I have a fairly extensive BASIC manual that for the TI, the flavor of BASIC that comes with the CC40, and it was impressively put together in my revenue.
But the thing that I remember is I thought, okay, I create a program. Where do I save it? And the answer was you don't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, word processors, I think there was, various apps. There's mathematical run long form formulas, but how do you save your work? And I guess that's what the Plus was going to solve. If you weren't going to buy that wafer tape drive, you could at least, hook up your cassette tape, because that's what all the 99ers were doing, at the time. But yeah, it seems a pretty short-sighted thing to not have had some kind of, storage at all. Yeah.
It does seem like one of the first things you think about, but yeah. We had a little run of RCR episodes where the CC40 got mentioned like every time for probably like 5 or 6. So people's bingo cards are doing quite well. We got the PX8 in, we got K-Sabbats, we got the CC40. But
yeah. I actually have my CC40 is at the office, so I haven't seen it in about 7 months. I trust it's still in the unlocked bottom drawer. We'll see.
Not anymore, but yeah. Yeah, I did. On Blake, on your suggestion, I did get the TI-95 Pro Calc and the TI-74 Basic Calc, which are I gather just this machine in a calculator factor.
It would seem to be. It would seem to be. Yeah. They. I think the basic that they have is similar, the same.
Mhm.
What's that, Michael?
Yeah, Blake, I'm glad that I'm glad your priorities are right. My one time I went into the office, the only thing I rescued was my coffee machine off my desk.
That's right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you woke up in time for the recording.
Yes, I did go ahead and rescue my Apple IIc, but I forgot I did forget the CC40 there. So
Okay, let's see. And I guess we can move on to Earl. Another element for the bingo card, I suspect. But
The QX10, yes, we talk about this. It seems fairly frequently. Here's the thing: I'd mentioned before about right sizing and organizing my collection, which made it really difficult not to pull the trigger on this auction and just buy this thing. But I didn't, and maybe that's good for you, the listener. Although the show might not come out when this is still up there because it's just got a little under 4 days left. But this is a Epson QX10, and it's working, and the pictures show it working. A couple interesting things. One is that a couple of the pictures are fuzzy, and I'm thinking if you're taking pictures of something like this and you want it to go for a good price, then I just say make sure your pictures aren't fuzzy, unless what you're saying is that the entire computer is fuzzy in real life, in which case that would be weird. It's a computer, but it's out of focus. The other thing about it is it has some labels on it that looks like it was possibly managed by a leasing company. I don't know if you can get a close-up on one of those or kind of zoom in. But apparently this was a business lease computer, and then it came back. And did they say in the description that it's been in storage for a long time?
in storage 30
in
years.
storage 30 years. Yep. So very interesting to find a working QX10. We know at least one of the drives is working because what they're showing is one of the Peachtree software packages that was available for it. No guarantee that the second drive is working, and they're a little tricky because the QX10 uses these weird third height 5 1/4 inch floppy drives that are kind of a bear to find a replacement for if they're not functional. But that's my auction pick because I think the price is really reasonable. $250 is the starting bid, or $350 if you just want to buy it now. I didn't think that was a bad price for a working QX10. The condition cosmetically is not 100%, but I don't see any giant dings or bangs or big splotch marks on it either. Just what appears to be some standard wear and tear.
It looks quite nice to me. The condition, I'm impressed. And actually, the fuzzy photos are sort of artfully done. But yes, they do conceal some of the details.
QX10 Nouveau. Yeah.
It's focused on a corner of a monitor.
Yeah, it's quite sexy.
Those sort of tilt shift things.
Yeah.
Another interesting fact about one of those fuzzy photos is that you can see a different QX10 in the background.
Right.
Oh, you're right.
Or at least another keyboard.
Which I wonder if, because they say that the Peachtree software that they're showing here isn't part of the auction. And I got to thinking, if you're selling your QX10, why would you want to keep that software package? But maybe they do have another QX10.
Yeah.
Maybe they have theirs and this is the one they're selling. I don't know.
This guy probably has a room full of QX10s just on desks every wall.
They're interesting. The reason that we talk about them so much is that at least some of us like them a lot. But yeah, I really like the keyboard look. Is pretty cool. Mine actually, the keyboards I have, I don't think they look like this exactly. I have one that is much more, that doesn't have the sort of like darker thing on the top. It's all sort of one color, but I'm not sure if that's just an overlay or what.
There were several keyboards that were for the QX10, if I recall correctly. In fact, one time I was at our international office and saw a keyboard with the Japanese kana characters on it. That was really cool.
Very nice.
Yeah, as a person looking from, at this over the years from afar, and I remember when these were, out on the market and you'd see advertising. I think there were television ads for these even. I was impressed by, I don't know if it is standard hardware, but I was impressed by those that were equipped with the hardware, how good the graphics appeared to be. I mean, I only saw them in monochrome, but they were rather high res, for, I'm sure it's, 640 by 400 or something, but I was impressed.
The screen on these is almost frighteningly sharp.
Yeah.
But what's difficult about these is that it's quite proprietary. So it doesn't, you have to get the monitor that goes with the QX10.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you just have a QX10 body, you are just stuck, basically. It has it also draws the power from, there's a single cable that runs everything. So the power and the video signal and everything. So, and the keyboard's like that too. You have to get the keyboard that goes with it and the monitor that goes with it. And getting them in pieces just means that you're going to be sad and spend a lot trying to find those pieces. And half the time what happens is, you find a monitor, but it's got a QX10 attached to it. So now you have two QX10s and one monitor.
Yeah. Well, at least they didn't route the whole system's power supply through the printer like the Atom.
Yeah.
Right.
Nice. Okay. Let's see. Who's next? Am I next? No. Michael's next. So,
Yeah.
what auctions do you have?
Okay, I'll just share.
Okay.
I had one, well, I had two, but let me just share application screen. The original one I was going to share was this one, which is CPM Fortran for S100 Memtech with an 8-inch disc. But some person went and bought it. I think it's heading off to Australia to be scanned. So I couldn't resist. So I purchased this one. I think it might have been all the pretty colors in the documentation. So that one I can guarantee will be at the Internet Archive sometime in the near future.
Nice.
But what I am putting up here for today is a vintage 1980 Heathkit learning course. This one is one of the modern ones with cassettes rather than the printed translucent 33 1/3 LP platters that I've got some for electronics, digital electronics, and some other ones. So those LPs are in the process of being digitized, but this one's on cassette. And I just love the vintage Heathkit learning systems, learning courses. They come in a great folder. You've got, let's just move it into there. And it is a fairly comprehensive system. I've got another one for one of their proprietary, well, not proprietary, one of their own computers. Unfortunately, it's got some of the circuit diagrams are on almost like plan prints. So it's going to be quite an exercise for me to scan those because they're probably, at a guess, I'd say they're A1 or A0 size, or whatever the American equivalent is for paper size. So even I'd need quite a large flatbed scanner to do that in multi-part and stitch it together. But I have actually started scanning that book. But yeah, this is my weakness, and if someone else wants to get in there and learn about some of these retro devices, I can't really go past recommending Heathkit Zenith learning courses. They're a great way to learn. There's even courses there in amateur shortwave and many other retro-related topics. So if you're after something different than just the hardware.
Cool. Okay, it looks like I am next. I'm going to quickly set my sharing up. I those of us, those who are listening who are not looking at the show notes, I had put an unreasonable number of things in the show notes, like I always do, but I really did this time. So I've cut it back a bit here, but I'm sharing the wrong screen. Okay, so let's see. How do I?
So anyone watching the live cast now, and you haven't got your coffee, it's too late. Here's Paul.
Oops. Okay. For some reason, I've started iTunes. Fantastic. What's happening? Okay, there we go. Okay, so some of these may not require a lot of discussion, but I thought they were sort of interesting. The first one is Commodore 25680. We were talking about the mini pet, and this is I don't know, a maxi pet. I don't know much about these, but I really like them. They look like they're made out of Play-Doh. They're very curved. I think wasn't this the one that was like Porsche designed?
I think that's actually apocryphal. I think that they weren't Porsche designed. I'm trying to remember the name of the designer for these. I can probably look it up while you're talking about it, but they're very rounded. They're very 2001: A Space Odyssey kind of inspired. And I just find them unbelievably gorgeous. I mean, it's really a work of art.
Yeah, that lovely deep pencil. Yeah.
I like the keys have a strong indentation too. I mean, there's a little pit to put your finger in.
It's like each key looks like a little bowl, like it's gonna hug your fingertip. It looks very pleasing.
Grab onto that fingertip and not let go.
So I don't actually know if it's working. Oh, this is not working. Okay, so I do actually know if it's working, and it isn't. Highest serial number known. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's a notable thing. So anyway, yeah, it is an interesting thing. They don't come up all the time. I see them occasionally. This is currently, it has basically 3 days to go. It is currently at $255 US. It has 18 bids, so lots of people are aware of this. And it's being shipped from Colorado.
I love their comment. Yeah, I love their comment that they don't like using the word rare, but they did.
Yeah. And I think that's fair to call this rare.
So it sounds like Porsche was involved in this, but that ultimately the design they used was by Ira Velinsky. So I'm reading from the Secret Weapons of Commodore site. It says, according to On the Edge, the systems were developed in 1981, 1982 under the auspices of Charles Winterbley, Commodore's head of engineering, and were originally envisioned on a concept created at the Porsche Design Center in Stuttgart, Germany. Unfortunately, although innovative, the Porsche design was ultimately rejected as too impractical, and Velinsky's design was used instead.
Interesting. So it would be.
I think that's the description that applies to this particular series of machines. And being a Commodore guy, I'm sure I'm going to get pounded by the Commodore people if I'm wrong about that. But I think that's the correct story for these machines.
So I'm not familiar with these at all. What was the kind of market segment these were meant for? Were these meant to be business machines?
I believe they were business machines.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's the B in CBM.
True.
Anyway, it's very nice. I probably will never have one. I have exactly one pet, size pet shaped machine, and I still haven't played around with it very much. I've started it a couple times, but it's one of my to-do items.
Earl, do you know if this is related? There's a machine that looks somewhat similar. I don't know if it has a monitor attached or not, but they were being sold for cheap in the back of magazines in '84 or so. The Commodore B128.
Right. I do believe that they're related models. And I remember them at the liquidators, right?
Yeah, because you could get them really inexpensively, and it seemed the ads ran long enough that obviously there were a lot of these machines that they were trying to unload. And I think they were developed, I mean, I guess like this. I think it was Commodore Europe, if I'm not mistaken, that did that. But you think they might be related. Okay.
I think they're part of the same line of machines. But to be honest, I don't know a ton about these because they're really, up in the thin air kind of area of Commodore collecting. Only a couple of people that I know actually have one of these. So certainly not something like a VIC-20 +4, a Commodore 16, or even a couple of the more rare pets. I've seen a Super Pet in person. I've never seen one of these in person.
Yeah.
The one in the auction. Oops.
Yeah.
The one we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen any of this line in person.
Because I feel like I have not seen. Oops, now I've lost my tab here. The B128. I don't feel like I've ever come across that at all. If they were really trying to liquidate these, how did none of them survive?
No, I mean the B128, which has no monitor. I think it was. I feel like I saw a documentary. I mean, it must have been an online video, but I feel like these were developed in Commodore France or something. It had nothing at all to do with the Commodore. With the Amiga, certainly not the Amiga, but also the as Earl said, the 64, the VIC-20, the 128. I mean, I think it's very similar to a CP/M machine, if I'm not mistaken. But
I think it's actually more similar. These are more similar to a PET.
Okay.
Yeah, it says
it's described as being the successor to the PET.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very nice.
It's interesting too. I think one of these might even have a VIC chip in it. Don't quote me on that.
I think I'm going to add this to my search terms.
It looks like apparently they were built to accommodate a second CPU, either an 8088 or a Z80, so you could run MS-DOS or CP/M. But yeah, that never materialized. Whatever the kit to make that happen never materialized.
So a good place to find out about some of these more obscure Commodore machines, things that were either really super rare or that actually never made it out of the R&D labs, is the Secret Weapons of Commodore. We could maybe put a link to that up in the show notes, but it's a good reference point for these really kind of, off the beaten path Commodore machines.
Okay, let's see. What else am I going to say? Actually, I'm going to skip over that. The next one I have it's somewhat unremarkable in a way. It is the Apple Monitor 3 manual kit. So it's got the manual itself for the Monitor 3, which is a monochrome. It's a monochrome monitor that actually was super. Well, at least I saw a lot of them out in the world because it was designed for the Apple III, but it worked for the Apple II. It's just a monochrome, sort of long persistence phosphor monitor, and I guess it was just cheap enough that schools would buy bunches of them and stuff. So it's actually pretty common across these monitors, just as monitors tacked on to some other system that you get. You can find $15 somewhere, or whatever. But it's kind of neat to have this whole kind of the stuff that came with it. So there's the manual, the the reader response, or the I forget what it is called exactly, but the sort of like warranty thing, and a postcard to send back, and a little Apple user input report. That was the term I was trying to think of. And there's a packing list and some sort of warranty card, I think, and this little like fiber thing to wipe down the mesh screen with. So that's kind of cool. It's actually not that hard to find these, but I mean, I think part of why I put this in is I remember actually a time earlier in my collecting life when I sought this out and got it and was very happy about it. And now I wouldn't even consider buying this just because I have like 9 of them. But it's kind of neat to be reminded of that time when like it is a cool thing. And the only reason I think it's not cool is just because individual aspects of my circumstance. But it is intrinsically a cool thing. So anyway, I wanted to kind of rehabilitate this in my own mind by pointing it out.
Have you taken the cleaning cloth out of any of these? I'm wondering if it's disintegrated after all this time, or if it's still just okay.
That's an interesting question. I mean, the answer to that question is no, I have not. I've admired it and then just like wiped off the mesh with my hand. But it's a good question, actually. I should see what one is like now. Anyway, I think that was all I had to say about that. But this I thought was interesting. This may be another one for the bingo card. So this is something. This is auctioned by Sci-Fi Man, which we've kind of repeatedly referenced auctions from this seller. I don't know exactly what the story is, but there's some really very impressive collection being slowly passed out through this this account, and I think it's basically just someone who's downsizing carefully. So it doesn't seem like, generally it seems like the person who is selling this stuff has a lot of early, it's a well curated collection, early prototypes of things sometimes, and knowledgeable about them. But recently there's been a couple of Apple cards, Apple II cards that have been going, and this one is listed as rare Apple IIe Novation modem, and it just says, here's a rare vintage Apple IIe modem issued by Novation for use with Apple IIe computers. Looks good. Other cards that were with it have worked. That's basically all it says. And if you look at it, you can see why it was kind of described that way, because what you see is this big card. It's got a big block on it that just says Novation, and on the top it says Novation Inc. It has an assembly number and a revision number, but it doesn't really say anything else. And it's got a couple of little connectors. So it's little connectors for one of the connectors is for a handset, from a phone, and then the other connector is for the wall plug for a phone. And what this actually is an AppleCat 2. So this is actually a really, really good modem. And it's missing the touch tone detector chip and the firmware chip, which were options. You didn't, like most of them are missing those. You can buy them as add-ons if you wanted. But this generally has a really good sort of like synthesizer. It can do speech synthesis. It can do, it can do half duplex 1200 baud when everybody else could only do 300. This was the Wares board. And it's really quite, I don't know. I believe that it is well sought after, but it doesn't actually say AppleCat on it. And so if you don't know what it is, you list it as a Novation modem and sell it for a buy it now of $30. If I didn't already have enough, I would have bought this. It, in fact, might almost be an investment buy. But don't do that. Don't buy it as an investment, because it's not. You're going to be sad eventually when the bottom falls out of this market. But if you didn't have one and wanted one, this is interesting. So let me refresh to make it it hasn't been bought by anybody in the stream chat yet. But anyway, so, and it's shipping from Canada, so it's to me at least it would be a $15 flat shipping rate. But this is one of the few times when Sci-Fi Man didn't seem to know what it was. So, I don't know if we need to comment more on the AppleCat 2 modem, just because we repeatedly talk about it. But so CF all prior episodes. Okay, let's see. This was so one more auction from Sci-Fi Man, but this is kind of an interesting thing. I think we talked a little bit about the maybe it was the paddle adapple or something before, which is like something that externalizes your game port. This one I think is even better. This is an Apple. It's designed for the Apple II, and it basically takes a one of these 16-pin DIP connectors and runs it through a ribbon cable to a zero insertion force thing on the outside. And so that's what I really like, is the zero insertion force thing. You have this little bar that you can open so that you can just sort of set the thing you want to plug into it, and then you can close it again to seal the connections. So this is good if you have multiple joysticks or paddles or something that you want to switch back and forth with. You can just use this, and you don't have to keep opening up your Apple II and stressing out the socket and the pins. But actually, it doesn't have to be for the Apple II. I've only seen them for an Apple II, but I mean, this is basically just a 16-pin externalizer. So anyway, does anyone have experience with these? Want to sing their praises or anything? No. Everyone says move on to the next thing. Okay.
Well, I like the idea. I don't know which models had the dip socket for the joystick as opposed to the DB9. Was it the 2E that started with the DB9?
I think I think all of them do, except the 2C have this option. So the DB9 existed as a second option on the 2E and the 2GS, I guess, too, right?
Because having a little ZIF extender seems like it could not just save your socket, but also help you not bend up the pins on your joystick or whatever else you're putting in the joystick port when you're taking things out and putting things in. So seems like a really cool little accessory.
Yeah, I think everybody should have had one of these. Yeah, I think at this point I don't really have a good like 2E setup to use as a 2E, but I think this is something that I would put in any such 2E.
Speaking of somebody who's almost bent one of the pins trying to get it into that dip socket, I would say this would be very handy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like, am I remembering correct? You probably know this, Paul. If the external numeric keypad for the 2E and the 2, didn't that plug into this thing also? Aren't there additional lines on the internal 16-pin that allow that to happen, or did it not plug into that?
I don't remember. I don't think it did. There was this little I don't remember. There is a DB9 spot on the keyboard encoder board. I think it's 9, and I think it's B. I don't know. It's a DX9. On the encoder board, there's a place where you could put a connector, and not all of the encoder boards had them. But I wonder if that's where that would connect. The 2E actually had like a spot you could put it, but the 2 Plus I don't know about.
Yeah.
Does anyone, any of the Apple people here know?
Actually, I'm looking at I was looking it up online, and it looks like a DB. Well, oddly, it's okay. Well, I guess we don't know what's going on inside, because it looks like a DB15 that clearly plugs into the back, something that mounts on the back plate of the Apple II, and that interface goes inside the computer somewhere, and that's what I don't see. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where it interfaces inside. So, but
We'll have homework for next time.
we don't want to know all things.
Right.
At
Gotta
least
save some things for you.
life can be a good thing.
Okay, let's see. The next thing. Okay, so I think I have two things left. This is the first of them. this is so. I found this interesting. This is a teleport Apple II manual. That's basically it. It's basically a game folder. So it's a folder that served as a manual. It's for a game teleport, and inside it has the instructions and the keys you hit, and that's basically about it. It does not come with a disk. It's just the thing. So there are two things about this that I thought were interesting. One is that it's, let's see. So does it say somewhere? I think somewhere here you can find that it is by Mike Abbott. Yes. And it says contributor programmers James L. Nichols and somebody else, Russell Self, I think. So this is, I don't know this game. This must have been from whoever Jim Nichols worked, Sentient Software maybe, or the Bug Attack people. Cavalier Computing, I think. I don't know this game though. Does anyone who would know it know it? I think it's kind of obscure. It's by someone who. So the Mike Abbott did Hard Hat Mac. That's not obscure at all. But this is kind of like some obscure, so someone's trying it now, I guess. But this is some obscure game by that person. It doesn't actually have the game; it's just the folder. But that was actually the thing. What made me think about this is that there was a time. I've kind of gotten away from that because I got the collector bug or something. But there was a time when I thought, actually, the thing that I really care about is the manuals, because I had like the software I have, but the manuals I don't. Right, and I never did. As a kid, you just traded them around or whatever, and so it sort of seems like these are the kind of the precious things. If we can find a good copy somewhere of the software, normally the software is just hiding in your disk drive anyway. The manual you hold. So I don't know why I kind of left that philosophy, but anyway, I thought this evoked that in me because A, I hadn't heard of the game, and B, it reminded me of a time when I used to think, that a Monitor 3 manual was cool. I used to think, all I needed was the thing, not the disk or the manual. So did someone start up Total Replay to see if it was in this?
I just did. It's not.
Okay.
That's what I was. Yeah.
That's what I thought I was hearing. Okay. It's not my last one. Where's my last one? I guess I didn't open that one. I think I'm gonna do this one just because I thought it was funny. In the show notes I called this the Ohio Scientific Superboard 2 Bat Computer. This is something that, so it's an Ohio Scientific Superboard 2, but someone put it in a case that is like crazy red. Ohio Scientific Model 600. And so I don't really know what the origin of the case is. It's sitting in this case on a little wedge of styrofoam to keep it angled. And then there's just this probably somewhat generic case. I don't think this is. Does anyone know Ohio Scientific well enough to know if this is something that they actually marketed?
No idea.
Yeah.
I would like to point out that white styrofoam is not ESD safe, so
It
that
just seemed,
person may have ruined it.
yeah. Although my guess is that to the extent that this was ever used, it was used in that.
Yeah, it appears to have always been that way as long as this person has owned it, I suppose. So it lasted 30 years that way, but
Yeah.
at any moment it could die because of that.
Yeah. So I don't know very much about these. I think it's 6502 based. Was that right? I'm pretty sure that was it Real Computing had a kit at one point. Somebody had a Superboard 2 replica kit that I think in fact they were being built at Kansas Fest one year. But anyway, so and because I remember actually the keyboard part of that kit was very nice. That's about all I knew about it. But Anyway, I just thought it was kind of neat and shockingly red. So, okay. I think I will leave it at that. I had that. I've gone through about maybe just a little under half of the things that I found, but maybe I will put them in next time's show. Okay, a little bit left. Quinn, you have some. Let's do those before.
Time with the people we're running, they're not really that interesting anyway.
Oh, you don't want to do them?
No, I mean, we're running very long here.
Okay, sorry. I should next time. I think if I'm ever going to have more than two, I will go last no matter what, so that I can abort before.
Yeah, I threw some items in there just because you're supposed to have items, but they're not very interesting.
Okay, all right. Good. I will of course cut all of this out. But okay, and our stream people have stuck with us. We've had 11 throughout. That's amazing.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. So let's see. I think we are then at the point of closing shots, closing discussions, and anything to add. So, Blake, do you have any parting shots?
I don't really have a whole lot to shoot in my parting. I have I guess in a different sort of retro angle. I've not gone crazy into it, and I don't intend to spend a lot of money or time with this. My wife was a little cautiously eyeing my move, but I picked up a turntable. So as far as and I've been going through some old items from the shelf from decades past. So yeah, that's not retro computing, but it has a little bit of a retro thing. And yeah, so that's what I've been playing with a little bit.
I'd read something that said, a news article recently that said for the first time since the 1980s, LPs had outsold CDs.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
I retweeted that, and it was the conversation that resulted on Twitter with people responding that led in 36 hours to me ordering a turntable. So yes, that's very specifically why it is that I did that, was that very article. Yes, so for better or for worse.
Well, you're contributing.
It would seem.
You're being part of the solution or the problem. One of the two.
Well,
I've actually lately bought a couple of vinyl albums and don't have a turntable, but I intend to get one.
Well, I mean, I think it'll be more a going when things are suitable to do so in the world. I have a really, really good East Coast notable used record shop just up the road. So I think it's more of a kind of having fun with that. But anyway, not really computing. Very much not analog. So yeah.
Yep. To bring it back into computing, one of my recent pickups was actually a ZX81 program on a 33 1/3 RPM platter.
Nice.
So I wonder what it's like on a high fidelity sound system.
Was it a flexi disc or actual like pressed into hard plastic?
This one, yeah, no. This one's a flexi disc from a magazine. So
Cool.
yeah,
Interesting.
Cool.
Do the LPs spin
Yeah, so that one
counterclockwise
escaped,
in Australia? I'd heard that.
no. We actually put extra gearing in so as to we actually just do a figure 8 on the band so that it actually changes the rotation. So
Excellent.
it counteracts the Coriolis force.
Yeah, I think I'm also in that situation. I have a few old and a few historical and a few new vinyl records and nothing to play them on. And someday maybe I'll get one.
Well, what I found is that today you can buy a turntable that will connect to Bluetooth. So if you have an existing decent Bluetooth speaker of any kind, you don't need to buy a stereo to hook it up to. And like I have a pretty good sound bar and subwoofer for my TV that has Bluetooth as an input. So like I'll just connect it to that. It's probably going to sound better than anything I've ever had a turntable connected to in my life.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So I've always found kind of funny is that people who suggest that there's something about the audio quality that they like. The idea of then sending it through like a wireless Bluetooth.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think.
What do you mean? Not using $50 per meter low oxygen copper wire?
Right.
Like I think for me, one thing that I really like about albums is it's the tactile experience and like the liner notes and like that it's a big thing to hold on to and look at, and that like I don't know. I think in this day and age where music you listen to, you get it online and it's streaming somewhere, and you don't have like any of the kind of just that liner notes experience. Like I always liked when I bought a new album, whether it was an album or on CD, to open up and look at, okay, where was this recorded? Who produced it? Like, even though I didn't know these names, but I just thought it was interesting trivia that is now like absent if you listen to modern music today. No idea.
It sounds like you. It sounds as if you're reading from the discussion thread that's off of my tweet 36 hours before I. Yes, and these were all the things that were mentioned. But we'll see.
Well, that was a real concern when streaming music launched, right? In Steve Jobs' announcement speech, keynote thing about the iTunes launch, they added this whole feature, right, where there was like album art, and you could click on it, and you could add liner notes to the album playlist on iTunes. They built a whole system for just that purpose, and then nobody cared.
Yeah.
Nobody ever used any of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But like to me, it's ridiculous that in Spotify today, you can't click on a song and get to know anything about it.
No.
Where it was recorded, who was involved, and because it's a very small amount of metadata, data-wise, compared to the content of the song, but it's just not attached to it, and it seems crazy to me.
Yeah. No, I used to like reading, as you said, the notes and everything. Even the same, I will watch the credits at the movie, basically out of respect for all the people who actually did all the hard work, not the ones that were stuck in front of the camera.
Right.
They're just acting. All the good technical and clever people are behind the camera.
True.
Yeah, I find it a little frustrating that the at least in iTunes, I don't know any good way to get the album art to be bigger than like this tiny little square. It's like I know that it's embedded at a much better size, but I can't make it come out. I can't see it.
Yeah, I was dissatisfied with the size of all the images online when I was adding my albums into iTunes, and I scanned my LPs, and somewhat annoyed that have all this high resolution art that iTunes just doesn't show.
Yeah. Anyway, so Blake's getting it. Blake has gotten a turntable, and we all were thinking about it.
Yeah. Join the club. Welcome.
Thank you.
Earl, do you have any closing thoughts?
Just one. We miss you, Carrington. I don't know what happened. I'm hoping the building's okay, and call us.
Yeah, I just tweeted that it was a false alarm, and now they're just all waiting to get back into the elevator.
It's like 2 hours long. 2 hours later. But anyway, well, we'll hear the exciting tale from Carrington later, no doubt.
Yeah.
Jack, any closing thoughts?
I have just one thing. A few episodes ago, I talked about that I'd ordered this Durgod Fusion mechanical keyboard, which I now have, and it's very nice. I like it a lot. It's got this retro styling. They have 3 different color models, and they have your choice of like 4 or 5 different MX switches. I have the blue. It's very nice and clicky, and it's fairly sort of thick, which is nice, and it has little feet that drop down, so you can tilt it up, that kind of thing. I don't know. I like it a lot.
That is
Connects
pretty.
with USB and with Bluetooth and with a dongle. Oh, and the dongle, I got to show you. The dongle is hidden under the logo. You press on this side and pop it out. Pop this little thingy off.
What is it? It comes with a Bluetooth dongle?
No, so it's a little USB dongle for plugging into just whatever into the back of your, into the side of your laptop or whatever. Like standard, like if you buy a wireless keyboard, it usually comes with a little dongle.
Yeah. Okay, right.
But it can also just use Bluetooth. So you can hook up to anything that has Bluetooth, iPad, whatever.
Cool.
So
yeah, since you mentioned it, I've seen it on all these different YouTube videos, and people seem to like it. And
Right.
yeah,
And so this one had a pretty good, like the Kickstarter price was good. It was about $100, and I think afterwards it was going to be closer to $200, which that seems excessive to me. But for about $100, I think it's fine. I'm happy with it, and I just like sort of the styling, and it's heavy and thick, and like I don't know.
There are not a lot of Bluetooth mechanical keyboards out there. You'd be surprised how few there are.
Yep. So I'm pleased with that.
Very cool. Yeah, I know. I was tempted, but I didn't succumb. So it's nice to see it, though.
Yep, that's good. I don't have to say that this is actually of all. I mean, I don't do a ton of Kickstarters, but this has got to be the fastest one I've ever done. Because I think I paid for it in August and I had it in September. To me, that's like a miracle. I'm used to things taking closer to a year. Like a month for Kickstarter is incredible.
Yeah, I was going to say that's just like online shopping.
Yeah. So, granted, it is from a company that, I mean, they do make other keyboards too. So it was kind of like a keyboard company decided to launch one of their products as a Kickstarter instead of just putting it in stores directly.
Right.
Excellent. Michael, any closing notes?
Well, just a closing one for me would be that I've got my 8-bit bunker scanning project that I'm doing. So if you just want to follow me on Twitter or just follow the hashtag 8-bit bunker scanning, and you'll basically enjoy all of the things. First Aid from the 20s. It's actually more of an advert for product. I've got STEM Rider. That's a Brisbane, Australia document creation package. 424 pages of documentation. You won't find that in a modern day package. From New Mexico University book, Apple Libraries and Computers. It's more of a generic book on how to use computers in public libraries. So there's lots of bits and pieces in here. If you want to learn about flying cars, so from Mechanics and Handicraft, January 1938, here's an article on flying cars. We're still waiting.
Yeah, haven't seen those yet.
Yeah. So yeah, it's basically me trawling through all the old books and bits and pieces that I have in my archive of printed material, just sort of scanning stuff in there. So if you want to see some of the old comics that I used to read back in the 70s, or some of the old books, there's Australian magazines that I've picked up over time, and we've just been sprocketed again.
Yes. In the stream that Cat joined.
Yeah. So just follow the hashtag. Just follow me, the Jungler, on Twitter, or just the hashtag 8-bits bunker scanning, just to see what pops out of the back of the bunker and onto the scanner.
Cool. Yeah, and I see that you've been putting some of them on in the Facebook group too.
Yeah, various Facebook groups.
I was thinking ours.
Interesting still
ours
photo.
is the only relevant one.
Yes.
Let's see. My notes. I got I took a clandestine trip. The cat is causing.
No.
But yeah, I took a clandestine trip to my vintage stuff stash in the middle of the night, encountering no people. I will not even say where I was, but while I was there, I grabbed Rana Elite 3 drive that I have, which it's actually a fairly rare thing, but it's like a double-sided 80-track drive for the Apple II. So it's sort of compatible with the other things, but it can write on both sides. And the reason I got it is that the applesauce can talk to it. So, and if the applesauce can talk to it, it can actually use that to image discs from like Commodores and Ataris and things that needed all the 40 tracks. So that's kind of cool. I have a use for it because I don't think I was ever going to use it actually attached to an Apple II. So I think that's kind of neat. And I also brought back a couple of Newtons and an eMate, and eventually a power supply. Oh no, actually I didn't. I never did find the power supply, but I had this vague recollection that I had a Newton power supply sitting in a drawer here, and so I banked on that, and it turned out that I do. So, and I guess the other note I put in the show notes that I wanted to remember was that I forget exactly how this came up, and it came up in the context of talking about MAME, but I have one of these MacBook Pros that has a touch bar, and it doesn't have a physical escape key. So it was in the window of time when there was no physical escape key, and you can't do a Control Option Escape to force quit with a touch bar. As far as I can tell, like even when everything is healthy and not hung, Control Option Escape doesn't, or sorry, Command Option Escape, I guess, doesn't bring up the force quit like it should in Mac OS. And so I remapped my right hand option key to be escape, because I never used that anyway. If I was going to use option, I would use the left one. And I love it. I use it all the time. I never use the real escape key anymore because it's so handy to have the escape right there by the touchpad.
Nice.
So anyway, I recommend it.
I was going to say, I'm running the beta of Big Sur, and I just did Option Command Escape on the touch bar, and it does bring up the force quit thing.
Oh, okay.
So maybe that was just an oversight before that they fixed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
I hadn't noticed it.
If I definitely felt like there were times I had assumed it would work, except that whenever I tried it, something bad was happening. So I assumed that maybe the reason it wasn't working was because of the bad thing.
Yeah, that could be too. Yeah.
But I've tried it sort of. I won't try it right now because something I'll disconnect the whole thing or something. But I remember trying it when it was not a problem, and like when things were just functioning normally, and I couldn't bring it up.
Right.
So I'm using Mojave though. I'm 2 behind. I skipped Catalina. I think I don't know if I'll ever go to Catalina. Maybe I'll be on Mojave forever.
Stay there.
Yeah.
It was better. It's better there. My Steam game still ran.
Yeah. Those were the days. Now you just sit idly staring out the window.
That's right.
Quinn, any closing notes?
Not really. Nope, nothing for me.
Okay. Well, I hope your air quality improves.
Yeah, it's getting better actually. Yeah, the wind currents are shifting. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we've done pretty well with well, there was a threat of 7 people, and then Carrington vanished, but even so, we held it down to my recording is under 2.5 hours, which is kind of amazing. So, all right, so that is it for this show. You can find the show notes for this and all the RCR shows at rcrpodcast.com. You can discuss the show in the forums at vcfed.org/forum/forum.php. You can follow RCR on Twitter at RCR Podcast. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/RCR Podcast and answer the questions so we don't believe you are a robot. You can send feedback to feedback@rcrpodcast.com, and we will next time talk about it. We are a member of the Throwback Network at throwbackreviews.com, and please write a review on iTunes if you wish, and that will help people find the show. And then until next time,
Retro Compute.
Getting worse at
we
that.
lost Michael right before the Retro Compute.
It doesn't matter if we sync, right?
Not at all.
I think
Okay.
the charm of it is that we never are in sync.
I was way
I'll
off.
fix with it.
I think it's impossible.
He is the man.
Yeah, in fact, I destroy the charm in a way because I specifically line them all up. But anyway, okay, yeah, that worked out all right. But it was long. So now I have.
It was not concise.
It was not at all. So now I have 2 monster episodes to edit. That's
Oh
great.
no.
But any minute now, they'll both be on the feed. Okay, so I think I will cut off YouTube now. So goodbye, YouTube. Amazing that you
YouTube.
stayed with us this whole time.